Legacy means nothing if you can't deliver on Sundays, and that's the story of these NFL players. Welcome to the bizarre saga of NFL Nepo babies gone wrong. Let's get into it. Kevin Matthews. When your father is one of the most respected offensive linemen in NFL history, your career comes prepackaged with impossible comparisons. Kevin Matthews, son of Bruce Matthews, the Hall of Fame guard who spent 2 decades anchoring the Houston Oilers and Tennessee Titans line, carried that burden from the moment he picked up a helmet. Bruce wasn't just great, he was legendary. 14 Pro Bowls, durability that bordered on superhuman, and a name forever tied to offensive line excellence. Kevin, on the other hand, entered the league the hard way. Undrafted out of Texas A&M in 2010, he signed with the Titans largely under the glow of his family name. He worked his way onto the roster, carving out a role as a backup center. For brief flashes, he showed grit and intelligence, traits his father was famous for. But the dominance, the aura, the star power, those never fully materialized. He bounced between the Titans, Redskins, and Panthers, always on the fringes of the depth chart, never the centerpiece. It wasn't failure exactly. Playing any snaps in the NFL is a feat most can only dream of. But when the name Matthews is stitched across your jersey, the expectations shift. Fans didn't just see Kevin Matthews the player, they saw Bruce's son carrying a dynasty. And while his cousins Clay and Jake Matthews went on to Pro Bowl careers, Kevin's journey simply faded out. Still, he fared better than our next guy. Christian Ponder. Christian Ponder came into the NFL with a spotlight that most quarterbacks can't imagine. The son of former NFL player and coach David Ponder and married to ESPN's Samantha Ponder, he had the media buzz and the family connections. But despite a solid college career at Florida State, Ponder's pro career quickly became a long string of disappointments. In a surprising move, the Minnesota Vikings selected him 12th overall in the 2011 NFL Draft, ahead of guys like Cam Newton and Andy Dalton. But soon, he proved to be a really bad choice. Ponder's flaws, especially his inability to remain in the pocket and his lack of arm strength, quickly became evident. His passer rating barely cracked 75, and his touchdown-to-interception ratio, 38-36, showed he struggled with accuracy and decision-making. Then there was his happy feet issue and his inability to stay in the pocket that led to him being sacked 95 times in just 38 games. By 2013, after a disappointing season, the Vikings drafted Teddy Bridgewater, and that was the sad end of Ponder's time as a starter. He had stints with the Oakland Raiders, Denver Broncos, and San Francisco 49ers, but his career never recovered. But at least he wasn't known as the Barbie of the NFL, unlike our next player. Bobby Carpenter. Bobby Carpenter had everything lined up for an NFL career, except the talent to back it up. He didn't just enter the NFL with a famous last name. He entered with a Hall of Fame coach vouching for him. Drafted 18th overall in 2006 by Bill Parcells, the Dallas Cowboys head coach at the time, Carpenter was expected to be a cornerstone linebacker. Parcells had coached Carpenter's father, Rob Carpenter, a hard-nosed running back for the Giants and Jets. This was no regular draft pick. It was legacy football, a Parcells guy anointed before he even played a snap. At Ohio State, Bobby looked the part. A 6'2", 250-pound linebacker with speed, versatility, and the pedigree of a national champion, he checked every box scouts drooled over. He was fast enough to cover, tough enough to blitz, and smart enough to call a defense. On paper, Dallas was getting the next great Buckeye linebacker. In reality, they got a role player who never fit. Carpenter's Dallas career was a disaster. In 4 seasons, he started only 3 games. First-round linebackers are supposed to terrorize quarterbacks. Carpenter managed 3.5 sacks in 4 years. Fans grew restless, teammates grew harsher, and on HBO's Hard Knocks, his humiliation became public. After getting repeatedly shoved around in practice by tackle Mark Colombo, Carpenter earned the mocking nickname Barbie Carpenter. Dallas eventually shipped him to St. Louis, and from there, his career spiraled. He bounced between the Rams, Dolphins, Lions, and Patriots, mostly as a special teamer. In Miami, he was cut barely a month in after blowing assignments on special teams, in a game where Bill Parcells himself was still in the front office. By 2012, he was out of football entirely, remembered less for his play and more for the nickname that defined his career. This player earned himself a nickname, but our next couldn't live up to his father's own. Jarrett Payton. His father never pressured him to follow in his footsteps, but Jarrett decided to, and when your dad is the almighty sweetness Walter Payton, one of the greatest running backs of all time, you're practically destined to live in his shadow. For Jared, that shadow was also a suffocating cloud. Still, he tried to carve out a space for himself. As a high school senior, he was a dynamic all-purpose player who was rated as a top national prospect. Jared chose to play at the University of Miami, a football powerhouse at the time, which was a strategic move to establish his own identity away from the shadow of the Chicago Bears. His career at Miami was solid, if not spectacular. He was a productive contributor in a loaded backfield, culminating in a breakout senior season where he rushed for nearly 1,000 yards and was named the MVP of the 2004 Orange Bowl. But then he entered the 2004 NFL Draft as an undrafted free agent, miles away from the first-round glory his father had achieved. Despite being a good player, Jarrett was never going to be the next sweetness. Still, a lot was expected of him. Unfortunately, his NFL career fizzled out in a hurry. After spending his rookie season on the Tennessee Titans' practice squad, Jarrett got a brief shot in NFL Europe with the Amsterdam Admirals, where he won a championship. But that was about it. His NFL career in general was a total bust. 33 carries, 105 yards, and 2 touchdowns in 13 games. Hardly a match for Walter's 16,000-plus rushing yards and 110 touchdowns. Thankfully, he pivoted successfully into media, becoming a respected sports broadcaster and carrying on his father's philanthropic work through the Walter and Connie Payton Foundation. For Jarrett, it was just his father's legacy that he was up against, but our next player had to fight both the past and the present. Barry J. Sanders. If being a Nepo baby is hard, being Barry Sanders' Nepo baby is downright impossible. The son of the most electrifying running back the NFL has ever seen, Barry J. Sanders came into the game with more pressure than yards he'd ever gained. Every carry came with whispers of his father's spin moves, jukes, and video game dominance, and that definitely didn't help. At Heritage Hall High School in Oklahoma, Sanders carved out a solid resume. Over 1,000 rushing yards, 17 touchdowns, and a 4-star recruit label. Big-time schools came knocking, and Stanford won the sweepstakes. The narrative was simple. The son of Barry Sanders would revive their ground game. But by year 2, a freshman phenom named Christian McCaffrey stole the show. While McCaffrey became a Heisman finalist and first-round pick, Barry J. became a footnote, totaling just 672 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns across 4 seasons. That's less than his dad averaged per year in the NFL. Hoping for a fresh start, Sanders transferred to Oklahoma State, his father's old kingdom. It was the perfect setup, son retracing dad's legendary steps. But instead of a Hollywood script, it was a quiet epilogue. He barely cracked 100 yards on the season and announced he wouldn't even pursue the NFL, pivoting instead to a career in marketing. Barry chose a career totally different from his father's, but our next player is carving a name for himself right under his father's umbrella, Kyle Shurmur. Being born into football royalty should be like starting the game on third base. Kyle Shurmur had that advantage. Son of NFL head coach Pat Shurmur, raised in locker rooms, marinated in playbooks, practically handed the secret codes to quarterbacking. If life were fair, he'd be an NFL starter by now. Instead, his name barely registers outside trivia nights. At Vanderbilt, Kyle teased greatness. He left as the school's all-time passing leader with 8,865 yards and 64 touchdowns. Scouts liked his discipline, his poise, his ability to read defenses. On paper, this was the kid built for Sundays. But football doesn't care about your last name. It cares about whether you can actually take over a game. And Kyle never truly did. Despite his record-setting college career, Shurmur went undrafted in the 2019 NFL Draft, a common fate for less athletic pocket passers. He signed with the Kansas City Chiefs as an undrafted free agent. His NFL journey was brief, as he bounced around practice squads for a few years with the Chiefs, Bengals, and Washington football team. After his playing career stalled, Shurmur made a seamless and predictable transition into coaching, a move that couldn't say Nepo baby more. He was a volunteer offensive quality control coach at Vanderbilt in 2020 before he got signed by the Bengals. We are not surprised that he is now a rising star in the coaching ranks, with a clear path laid out for him by his father's reputation and connections. While some players keep the family legacy shining, others simply drag it into the mud, like the last player on our list. Kellen Winslow Jr. No name on this list embodies the phrase miserable failure, quite like Kellen Winslow Jr. He didn't just fall short of expectations, he managed the rare, almost impossible feat of torching his career, reputation, and life in spectacular fashion. The son of Kellen Winslow Sr., a Hall of Fame tight end who redefined the position, Winslow Jr. entered the league with the kind of hype you only see once in a generation. At Miami, he was an All-American, a Mackey Award winner, and the centerpiece of a Hurricanes dynasty. By 2004, the Browns thought they were drafting the second coming of his father when they took him 6th overall. And right from the start, he showed the other side of the Nepo baby coin, entitlement and ego. After a loss in college, he infamously screamed, "I'm a soldier." It was supposed to make him sound tough. Instead, it made him look clueless. On the field, Winslow had the tools, size, speed, and hands. But his Browns career was cursed from the jump. A motorcycle crash in 2005 wrecked his second season before it began. He fought back, even managing a Pro Bowl year in 2007 with 1,100 yards, but he never shook the reputation for being difficult, selfish, and injury-prone. In Tampa Bay, he briefly flashed again, including a 1,000-yard season. But even when he was producing, coaches and teammates complained about his attitude. He was the guy who could make a circus catch on Sunday, then poison a locker room by Wednesday. By the time he was bouncing between the Patriots and Jets in 2012 to 2013, the writing was on the wall. He was out of the NFL by 30, a wasted first-rounder with a famous last name and nothing to show for it. And that's all for our NFL Nepo Babies list. We can all agree that last names don't always equal talent and performance. Who isn't on this list? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.